Hello, everyone, and welcome to the On Time, On Target Financial Thought Leadership Series. And I am privileged to bring to you today Chris.tinnell. So when you think of that last name, think the number 10 and then L, and we'll get back to that here in a second. But Chris.tinnell, who lives right in the same neighborhood that I do, he is literally the top of mind awareness kind of guy when you think of, hey, I need an agent. Now, right now, nobody's selling where we live, and everybody wants to buy into where we live, but that doesn't last forever. But the reason I wanted to have Chris on today is not only is the local expert, but he can help educate us no matter where you live throughout the United States on some of the inside real estate things of, since we only do this every 5, 10, 20 years, maybe once or twice in a lifetime, but he does the buying and selling of homes all day, every day. That's all he thinks about. So now's the opportunity. Hopefully I will ask a bunch of good questions to Chris. And even if I don't, he's going to share a bunch of knowledge that he has as well. So Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. And go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself for our listening audience and some of your backstory.
Okay. So, I grew up in El Paso, Texas. Don't hold that against me, though. But anyway, got to Central Texas as fast as I could. I started out working at the Capitol. I have a political science degree. So what do you do when you have a political science degree? Well, you sell real estate. That's what you do. So anyway, I got, after working for about 10 years at the Capitol, I got to work, got the privilege of working for a builder and learned a lot about building and construction and things like that, sales, of course, and did that for about 15 years and then decided to get my real estate license and been running with that ever since. So,
all right. So sorry to cut you off there. So when you're like, hey, I should get my real estate license, was that a 3-year period or 15-year period of thinking about that? Or was that just I saw a seminar and I was like, I can do that? Or did you know a friend? How did that come about to where you decided to go into real estate?
well, it was probably more like about a 5 to 10 year. I'm thinking about it. I should do it, and then finally, you just get to a point where working for somebody else that you decide you want to kind of work for yourself, and so that's what really spurned it, and finally got to the point where I didn't want to have to ask to go on vacation and things like that. I wanted to be able to work it into my lifestyle, and so anyway, that's kind of why that's what really pushed me towards becoming my own real estate agent, my own boss, so to speak, even though I do work for a broker.
Well, and we'll get into that in a minute, but I do think I know that what you just said hits home with a lot of our listeners that should do it, right? And I talk about the folks, I spent 20 years in government service. Call me a chicken. I wanted to hang out, and I got to do a pretty cool job along the way. But really, from a financial perspective, I wanted to hang out and play it safe so I can get the pension and then branch off into my own. But when you say, this is something you should do, for those of you that are out there listening that are having maybe pillow talk or whatever, and they're like, you should go out and go on your own. It's not an easy step to make, to get out there and work for yourself. So when you did, quote unquote, work for yourself, because you just mentioned that, not exactly, what's the relationship like there? So you went and you got a license and then you interviewed with somebody. What happened there for you to be able to go out and start executing your business?
So so I ended up, taking all the classes, things like that, have to pass the test, everything else, get fingerprinted. And so did all that. And then I just decided to hang my license with a buddy of mine who actually lives in our neighborhood, or used to live in our neighborhood, and just decided to go ahead and hang my license with him. And he's just a small brokerage. He worked for the larger brokerages before, but he went ahead and got his broker's license, and so I just kind of hung it under him. And that's basically how I got started.
So you were able to do everything. I know the process is like every time you buy a house, there's a stack of closing documents, 100 pages deep. You do it all electronically now, and then you meet somebody in person, you have to do it all in ink. So you guys were able to do everything kind of out on your own, sort of thing, just the two of you?
Yeah, we sure were. Yeah, we had a good working relationship too. We knew each other in the neighborhood, belonged to, some of the HOA committees and things like that as well. But we actually had a working experience when I worked for the builder, and he was a realtor as well. So we had a good trusting relationship because of that.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
sounds good. And then when I think, personally, and from what others have come on the show and said, when you branch out on your own, yeah, you go get your licenses, and then maybe I see your logo there on your shirt. Whether that was the original or that's matured over time. You kind of you go out, you get your t-shirts and your polo shirts, and then you're like, all right, I'm in business. How hard is it at the beginning in the real estate business before people, now it's everybody knows your name, but before that, how hard was it at the beginning?
Oh, it was extremely tough, so fortunately, I've gotten a little gray hair. I have had people tell me that oh, I want my agent to have a little gray hair, So I didn't have as much gray hair back then, but
Right.
anyway, yeah. So yeah, it was tough getting going because you think that okay, I'm gonna get my license, and I have all these friends who are buying houses. I might buy a house, things like that, and you think, oh, all my friends are going to go with me, and they're going to refer me and all that. And the tough part is the really tough part about the business is people want an experienced agent. And so it didn't turn out that way where all these people would use me. I lost a lot more deals than I do, these days because I didn't really have the experience. So, the old saying, fake it till you make it. Well, I kind of faked it till I make it. Now, luckily, too, I did have my broker, my friend, who was kind of helping me out and giving me some advice and telling me all the forms I needed and things like that. So I did have somebody looking over my shoulder. I was fortunate too, though, to have worked for a builder and knew a lot more about real estate because of that.
Yeah, well, I think that experience, and I didn't know that going in, but that experience is critical. Sure, when you're talking to somebody, or when you're out there and you're brand new to the game, if you will, no matter what your age is, that you do have experience in the industry, so you can sound smart when you're talking to folks. And when you started, so you started off with your friend or your business associate or partner. Did you end up working you work for a bigger house now, right? As far as a big agency, or tell us some of, I guess a better question would be the trials and tribulations of navigating the career field, working for different businesses, if you will.
Well, what I kind of so what happened is I learned that I didn't really have the tools. He was a smaller brokerage, and sometimes that works for people and things like that. But I realized I didn't really have the tools I needed, and I was going to have to reinvent the wheel, right? To get all these tools and do all this marketing, and things like that. And so as I gained more experience and I got a pretty good book of business, and I was doing a pretty good annual amount of business as well, I started getting noticed by some larger brokerages that would only take people on if they were successful. So they would tell a lot of these newer agents, hey, go to these other brokerages, get your training and things like that. And they're bigger brokerages, but they would tell people, go get your training and get to a certain level. And then when you get to that level, then come call us. That was kind of what they would tell new people that wanted to come on board. So anyway, I started getting noticed, and I got a cajillion phone calls right as the time I was thinking like, gosh, there's just got to be an easier way of doing this. And I need somebody that really understands marketing more and does a lot more from a marketing perspective that's going to, market me. And so I joined another brokerage that I'm not with now, but I was with them for about 5.5 years. And it was a very good relationship. They actually encouraged me and pushed me to the next level. And I got all the marketing and had all the things that were literally I could push a button and they got done, or they just got done automatically.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's what kind of got me to that. Really, that next level was going through that, and then yeah, I got phenomenal tools with the brokerage I'm with now, and that's one of the reasons why I went over to this brokerage, even though I have to give a bigger chunk of what I earn over to them. But to me, it's worth it for my buyers and sellers to have all those tools that they need in order to have successful transactions.
Okay, and you're right. I was going to ask that without trying to be intrusive, but it is a money show, right? So, as far as you're right, given more of the percentages, so I think is the industry standard to still, 6%, if you will, And can you break down where that 6% goes? And unless you're not supposed to talk about that, then then you don't have to. But is that something we can kind of dig into?
Well, I probably don't want to divulge too much on that, but I did have to when I first started out, I had to give a little bit more than
Okay.
I do now because I do a lot more, a lot more volume,
Hmm.
and so that makes the brokerage more. Therefore, they can lessen a little bit what I have to give them. But we do have a lot of things that, and this is what I would, was a little bit of a shocker when I first got into it was that we have to, not only be, have our license, and that costs you money. We have to do continuing education, that costs you money. I have to become a member of the National Association of Realtors, the Texas Association of Realtors, the Austin Board of Realtors, or one of the local boards of realtors. And, a lot of other little things. I have to have E&O insurance, which is errors and omissions insurance. Have to have all that. And, of course, you have typically with a lot of the brokerages, you might have a desk fee, an office fee, things like that every day, and insure your car up to that you take people around in to, for a certain amount of money. So it was a little bit of a shocker when I first started that I had to put so much money out there. And for me, it was like, okay, burn the bridge, burn the bridges, or burn the ships. There's no going back now. And so, I've got all this expense. I better make it work. And but yeah, there is quite a bit in there. But the brokerage I'm with now, they get a certain percentage of my money, and to me, it's worth it because again, I've got a lot of great tools and things like that that I can that my buyers and sellers can use that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Sure. And that makes sense. And when I heard you talking about, it seems like there's an entrepreneur piece that you're on your own, and then you kind of have all these other tools. So I guess how would you relate it trying to explain to somebody? Are you pretty well 100% in charge of your own schedule and what you're off doing every day? Or are you answering, quotas, or, checking in with bosses, sort of thing? What can you share with somebody that might be interested in getting in the industry?
Well, probably what I would say is, I have just enough rope to hang myself, right?
Fair.
So, yeah, I have some autonomy and things like that. But at the end of the day, I do have somebody that answers. One of the things I like too is I actually have somebody that checks over all my paperwork and things like that to make sure that we have, crossed all our T's, dotted all our I's, the whole bit. And but at the end of the day too, if I'm not performing, if I'm not getting to a certain level, which is probably top 10% of the realtors or so, I'm probably won't be invited back the next year. So
Well,
there is a little bit of a threshold to maintain to be a realtor with the brokerage, which by the way is Compass Real Estate.
mhm.
And so you have to. They're only going to take on successful agents, and so yeah, you do have to hit a certain threshold to be there.
Yeah, well, you hear top 10%. Those aren't rookie numbers, right? That's that's way up there. So that's good. You're good with them, and then I assume you don't have to be 10% of that, right? So it's like once you're in the 10%, then you're good, sort of thing. Or
Yeah, pretty much. As long as you're making the numbers and things like that, it's yeah. Honestly, I'm probably more like top 1% of agents in the Central Texas area, but they're that's just a threshold to get noticed by the brokerages that concentrate on successful agents and then helping them get to the next level as well if they want to get to the next level.
well, you bring up an interesting point. So, like in my business, I have to publish once a year how my assets under management, and I have to talk about how many clients I have and all that stuff. And that's public information. Most people don't know that, but yeah, you can literally Google my name or Afterburner Financial and find out all that stuff. So, when you're saying like top 1%, is that measured in total sales? The total, I guess, what goes behind that measurement, or what's measured there?
Yeah, it's dollar volume. So there's some agents that have maybe only do 3 or 4 deals a year, but they're doing it's not hard to have a bad year when you're dealing in 10 or 15 or $20 million properties. So There's a few of them that just do fewer deals, but my dollar, my average is a lot less than that. But
Right.
yeah, so
That
mhm.
that's good to know. Well, let's shift gears. Excuse me, for a second. To for those of us like me that have maybe I've done I think either 3 or 4 house deals. You know, so what's that, 7 or 8 total buying and selling? So I guess we'll talk about sellers first. What are some keys to success, or some things to think about for somebody who's thinking about selling their house, on how to prep it, how to find an agent, how to kind of set you up for success as an agent, so you can go out and get them the most money for their house.
Well, so yeah, so what's happening right now? Let's just talk about the market we're in right now. It's kind of crazy, right? And I do know people that are like, well, why do I need an agent? I can just put it out there and it's going to sell. But sometimes people get, they concentrate on, well, I don't want to have to pay that agent a commission or something like that. And again, we only get, the only person that pays a commission is the seller. So buyers never pay a commission, but the sellers do pay a commission. So, what I do is personally is I bring along for a seller, I'll bring along my stager, and we'll go through the house, and we want to make sure that we have staging for two reasons. One of which is the best photography possible to
Okay.
showcase that room, to make sure it looks big and roomy and open and inviting and things like that. That we have the right light bulbs in place, the right lighting, everything, because that all sets a mood.
Right.
And then so we'll do the staging and everything else, and then we take photography right on the back of that staging when we're done there, so the kids can't wreck it all back up again right before the photos, right?
Right.
So anyway, we'll do that, and so I only bring in professional photography, and I want to make sure that I have the best photos going forward, and with the best lighting, everything's adjusted, the whole bit. You got that backyard that maybe looks bigger than it really is, because I got the right lenses and everything else. But no, long story short, we want to do that for all of our sellers. And the idea is that we get as much marketing and as much, you know, um, attention as possible. So we get as many people through and many people looking at that. Because, if you're that agent with the, and I see this a lot, but they're in the mirror taking that photo, right? With their camera,
Yes.
and trying to get out of the mirror there a little bit, and meanwhile the toilet lid's up, drives me crazy, and all the stuff's out on the counters, 4 bulbs are burned out, things like that. That just drives me nuts. So I try to make sure we have all our best foot forward, and when you have better lighting and things like that, people will pay more for it actually when they feel good and they see also too that, hey, maybe this house doesn't need a whole lot. And sometimes we talk about strategy a little bit,
Right.
and maybe we don't need to update or upgrade everything in this particular price point or this neighborhood or things like that. But the more we do, generally the more money I can put in that seller's pockets.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that makes sense. And I'm thinking of, if somebody's out there as a brand new agent, what's the expectation? So when you sign on with the seller, and you're like, okay, well, here's my list of 50 things we need to do, right, to make this perfect and hire the photographer. Are you eating that cost as the agent up front?
I eat a lot of it. I sure do. So I pay for me personally. I pay for all the staging. Now, when I first started, I didn't, but I found that um, if I didn't pay for it, a lot of people wouldn't do it or wouldn't get it. So I finally said, okay, this is what I want my brand to. I want people to know, if they look at my properties and be intrigued by my properties, that I list, that they're going to see um, everything in its place, and see a nice product. And so I kind of want that reputation going forward. And so yeah, so I do eat that cost. I eat I take on the cost of professional photography. And sometimes too, if I'm even working with an investor and there isn't professional photography, say we bought a house and now we're leasing it out, um, I might go ahead and just suggest, if we're going to hold this long term, let's go ahead and get some professional photography too, because in the leasing world, there's not a whole lot of good photography out there. So if ours can shine better than the others, then it gets us, more people want to either see that property or lease that property. So, yeah, there's a lot of little costs like that. It's not too uncommon for me to either send one of my workers by there, or if I got time, people see me around the neighborhood power washing,
Right,
so
yeah.
I certainly don't mind doing some things like that just to help it shine. But we do give a list a lot of times to that seller to do, and some of the things I'm helping get done as well. Maybe paving my stager a little bit more to kind of stay there and help do some things, and then she'll also come back when we call fine tuning, like an hour before photography, just to move things around just perfect so everything looks good for the photography.
All right. So when you mentioned staging, so um, so I mean we're talking the full staging where you're bringing in furniture and they have to be completely out of the house. Or are we talking taking what they have and making put the best face forward, sort of?
Most of the time, we are working with what they have.
Okay.
I do have a storage room full of furniture. It doesn't work for every house, but I do have some staging furniture. So sometimes I am bringing some stuff in an empty house, or we might, my stager has a few little knickknacks if we're a little light in some areas or things like that. Maybe a painting or two. We might move some things around. Maybe if we don't want the five dogs playing poker over the fireplace, we might move a few things around like that. And but yeah, so it's kind of both. But generally, we work with what people have and go from there. Unless it's vacant.
Well, that's the exact question I was going to ask next. Is there a strategy or a drop off, a little cliff or whatever, for selling a house while you're still in it and all your stuff's in it versus when it's empty? Do people pay less when it's empty, or any strategies there?
Well, you have to tiptoe around this a little bit, but to tell people, I'm sorry, but your furniture is ugly, and we probably just need to get rid of that. But have had people before where, okay, I'm asked, okay, you're going to move into a new house. Uh, can we go ahead? Are you going to buy new furniture for the new house? And then they'd be like, yes, we don't want this old, ratty stuff. So
Right.
can we go ahead and buy the furniture for the new house now and utilize that? So we've done some things like that before.
Huh.
But sometimes homes do show better if you're out. It's strange, but for the most part, it's better when you're in there and you've got everything in there, because then you start noticing, like, oh, look at that stain on that carpet, or some things like that you weren't seeing before. But yeah,
Okay.
it can go both ways, but for the most part, it's better for most people, when they're in there.
All right. And let's switch to the seller's perspective. First of all, do you work with sellers too, right?
But you mean buyers,
Um, yes.
sellers, or buyers?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm wrong. I got that back.
Okay.
A buyer's perspective. What do they need to do, or what do you need from buyers to set yourself up for success on finding them that right home?
Well, so yeah, so it takes these days, it takes a little more patience than it has in the past, because we're competing with so many offers and things like that. But my general advice to people is, we're not going to find the perfect house. It doesn't exist unless we probably build it twice. You live in it once and you build it again, and then make some changes, and so that's your perfect house. That's your 100% perfect house. But for the most part, it doesn't exist. So I'll tell people, if you find 90% of what you want, that's a home run, and consider that job well done. If you find 95% of what you want, then that's like hitting it out of the ballpark.
Right.
So just kind of have to set some expectations a little bit with people, and what's more important, is it neighborhood, or is it having that newer house? I'll get people a lot of times that go, okay, I want this neighborhood with these schools, but I would like a house that's only 5 years old. And I'll have to talk them into getting a DeLorean, and so we can go 88 miles an hour
Yeah.
and go back in time. Doesn't
Even
exist. So we have to figure out which is the way we want to go on that. So
Funny. How about financing too? Do folks need to be like in my world? I'll talk to somebody, and eventually it's like, okay, the uncomfortable question is, well, how much money are we talking? Are we talking 250,000? We talking 2 million? So from a buyer perspective, do they need to be pre-qualified? Is that important, or
it
no?
is. It's usually our first step. The first thing I'll do is I'll send people by to a mortgage professional. I like to do with somebody, if I can, make sure they're local. But if they already have other relationships, great. If not, I have recommendations too.
Right.
But we'll typically have, I'll typically start them out there, and then so also too, so they've run credit, they've looked at job, history, things like that, debt to income ratios and things like that. So we'll have a good idea of what they qualify for, what their payments might be, and and then we can adjust from there. If they want to utilize the whole amount, or maybe want to step down a little bit, whatever that price point is. It gives us a good basis to go by. Plus, in these times here, when we find the right house, we got to move fast. So my advice a lot of times to people is take your time finding the right house, but once you do, go fast, because that's when other offers creep in and you're in multiple offer situation and things like that. If you can avoid that, all the better, or it gets sold. So
Right.
so anyway, that's first step, is getting them pre-qualified, and then generally I'll set up a search for people and say, okay, this is the area you want, or this is the price range that you want. This is the year of the house that was built, or is it a 1 story, a 2 story? Is it back to a green belt? Is it back to a golf course? Is it a lake property? What is it that you're looking for? And we'll set in that criteria, and that's I put that into on my website, and I'll send a search from people from my website with all the criteria that they wanted. And as properties pop up, they'll let me know. They'll hit a little star button, save it as a favorite, or basically say, no, I don't want to see this house again. Hit the little slant button, circle with the slant going across. And but also what's cool about my website is we can interact back and forth and say, I really like this kitchen, or hey, I was just noticing that backs to a really busy road. Are you okay with that? And so we can kind of have a little interaction back and forth on each of these listings as well.
Okay. And then what what is the what's the general philosophy or the atmosphere amongst like other agents? Is it, and I'll just kind of say amongst financial advisors, when I entered the industry, I thought it was going to be kind of cutthroat, right? So you're with me or you're against me. That's what I thought it was going to be. I found it was not that way at all. It was actually, join the different clubs and associations and things and learn from others. It was so much more open. I was pleasantly surprised by that, because I didn't see that coming. What's it like in the real estate world? Is it a little bit cutthroat? Is it a lot cutthroat? Is it not cutthroat at all?
Yes. Yeah, so it's interesting, because you always have people that not trying to be this way, especially when I first started out, not be jealous of other success, celebrate that success, and maybe learn from them. And so there is a little bit of that there's some competition, some people that are a little more competitive than others, and then there's some others that basically will celebrate other successes, and so encouraging each other and all that. And I will say that these days, it's because it is so competitive, a competitive environment. It's really important to get along with other agents and be the type of person like, okay, this is how I run my business. So, when you do bring that buyer along, they're not going, oh, well, I worked with that guy before. I
Right.
don't know if we want to work with him again. They're telling their seller that, right?
Right.
And so, you want to be respected in that. Yes, you represent your client to the best of that of your ability, without crossing that line. And where you get into the point of you're not any good to work with. So it is important to have a good reputation and work well with others, because There's several agents who do a lot of business, and you're gonna, cross paths quite a bit. Uh, if I can just tell a story real quick, it was kind of interesting because I had a buyer who was one of about 13 offers, and we weren't the top offer, but the agent said, "Hey, listen, I talked to my seller, and we would rather work with you because I've never worked with this other agent before. I know how you work. I
Right.
know you're not going to try to pull anything at the last minute or anything like that, and you've been really good to work with. So we would rather work with you. Would you come up to this amount, and then we would work with you instead?" And so that's the kind of reputation I think you want a little bit, and the work environment that you want. Um, of course, everybody wants to be number one,
Right.
but do celebrate and learn from others, that maybe are in that number one spot.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to bring that up because it seems like all the signs say number one, right? So
Oh yeah.
no, nobody's selling a house right now, but back when people sold, you would always see, number one selling agent or buying agent or whatever it was. It's
Hmm.
kind of funny. So, Chris, largely you've made it, at least from the lens I look through as an outsider looking into your business. So, to me, you have that top of mind awareness from my neighborhood, maybe more. I don't know. But certainly, it's like, hey, you're gonna sell your house, you think of one name. I know that takes a long time and it takes some intentional branding, like 10L 10L on your vehicle, and drive that around the neighborhood. And we talked earlier before we went on the show about maybe we might have met through a door to door thing back when you could kind of do the walk around and actually meet people in the neighborhood. But my question for you is, as successful as you are, if you can rewind the clock, what would you do? What would you either advise younger folks looking to go into the industry, or not necessarily younger, even just new folks to the industry, or a younger version of yourself on kind of keys to success to get to where you are today?
Boy, that's a good question. I kind of think back about, when I first started, I probably would have got a little more training. We, for me, I've always been the gung ho type person that just turn me loose, I'll figure it out later kind of a thing. I probably would have, went with that bigger brokerage, that maybe trained some of the agents and things like that. Probably should have done that initially, and then maybe went out on my own or joined a friend's brokerage or something like that. I probably would have done that route instead of trying to figure it all out. I mean, it all worked out. So, but I probably would have gone for that training and had those programs and things like that, that I could utilize a little bit more. So that'd be number one. I think one of the things I did right, though, really did right, is when I first kind of got in, if you can call it real estate, but I started working for the home builders early on, and that was something where I learned a lot. And also, the SOI is what we call it, the sphere of influence, right? So I had a huge sphere of influence from selling homes in a couple of neighborhoods over all those years. And so I think that was the one thing I really did right to start that out. And um, and have that, and then treat people right. I'd always battle with some of my bosses, with some of the builders, and that treating people right. They would say they were looking at the bottom dollar, and I said no, that's wrong. And I would kind of take a role as a real estate agent instead of a salesperson for that builder, and make sure that people were getting treated right and we were doing the right thing constantly. So I was butting heads with them, but I always would tell my bosses that you're looking at one deal and I'm hoping to sell these people another home, in the future, or have them, give me a good reference or give the builder a good reference. So, and I would always talk about, well, this is Chris.tinnell Incorporated. Yes, I work for the builder, but this is still Chris.tinnell Incorporated. So let's treat everybody right. So those are some of the things I think I did right. But, going back, it definitely would be, getting a little more training, having a little more marketing and things like that for sure, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, well, for sure, reputation is everything, especially when you're dealing in, big ticket items or big dollar numbers, which, selling a home for, it's the largest asset most people ever have, are these transactions. So you certainly need that, and why I wanted to have you on the show, that integrity, honesty, and transparency. It's just give me the scoop, right? Most people don't want to feel like they're having to sort through a bunch of information. So appreciate you sharing, some kind of inside real estate information here today. For those that are interested, to either learn more from you or reach out to you maybe for a potential transaction, how should folks get a hold of you?
So you can go to my website. It's chris.tinnell.com. So my first name, last name.com. And that'll always direct you to, have my contact information. But you can also either call me or text me at 512-626-8811. And I pretty much work 7 days a week. I love what I do. And a lot of people are like, hey, sorry to bother you on a weekend or something like that. And that's our bread and butter is the weekend, right?
Right.
Of
Yeah.
course, everybody expects you to work Monday through Friday on top of that. But anyway, sometimes, people get a little, apprehensive about contacting me on certain days. But I love what I do. I don't view it as work. I'm very fortunate to be able to do what I absolutely love every single day. So I will work 7 days a week and take phone calls sometimes, maybe when I shouldn't, like when I'm at dinner or something, or on vacation or something like that. But
Well,
anyway, yeah.
certainly the passion is obvious. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. We happen to be this won't be released until next week, but Friday evening, early evening, some time. I appreciate you taking the time out to be on the show for us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity and enjoy always as always working with you. So appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Chris. So that's all we have for today's show. Please reach out to me through ototnow.com with any questions or comments. Thanks again for joining Chris and I tonight. And here's to you fighting the good fight every day to be on time, on target with your financial goals. Thanks. Bye.